Hi everyone, welcome to my review of The Little Mermaid in 1989. This is the 28th Disney animated feature film, and it's once again directed by Ron Clements and John Musker. This film, is very, very popular, really, as a Disney film. And of course, famously, the one that kind of started the Renaissance period, in 89, before that, and I've seen a couple of these Dark Age Disney films. I've seen most of them actually, and I don't think it's quite as bad as some say. I think actually the post-Renaissance period, if you ask me, is really the worst period, maybe in Disney at all. Overall, and really there was nothing special at all really coming out. I don't think in that time. But yes, I've seen most of them, and but of course with films, recently before this coming out like the Black Cauldron, of course, commercially and critically, Disney wasn't doing well, but this one, brought it back. You could say, done well at the box office, very very well, and as well critically, it's got it's got an 88 on Metacritic, and a 90 something on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert would give it a 4 out of 4, and it's got a 7.6 on IMDb. So this one is very acclaimed, very loved, and rankings it's quite high, just in terms of animated films in general, not just Disney Renaissance or Disney. And yes, it's about Ariel, the character Ariel, 16-year-old mermaid who basically she has a friend, Flounder, who's a fish, and of course Sebastian, the crab. Now she dreams basically of going beyond and kind of going to coming away from the sea and basically going to see humans, and very early on she kind of sees this prince above ground, sea level, and she basically she wants to she kind of falls in love with him, kind of thing, and she wants to basically escape, and the Sea King, her father, he basically says she can't go above sea level, basically go and see to the actual land, and basically she, the villain of the film, Ursula, basically does something which I won't get into, and it traps her in some way, and it changes things, it takes away something from her, and she's got a certain amount of time until specifications until she kind of is trapped forever basically, under this spell, and it's kind of in that sense it brings a lot of classic tropes from Disney and kind of fairy tales into the foreground, and it plays little just twists on it as well. And of course, most of the film, well, half the film is under the water, the rest of the film is above, on land, and with the prince and everything there. And this film is very very popular, and it's known to have brought Disney put them back on the map, and yes, it's not one that I really liked as a kid. Actually, it's the one that I actually think is the it's the one that I watched the least of the Renaissance period. Really, the only film as well I've not seen of the Renaissance ever is actually Beauty and the Beast, which is shocking. I know. I've seen most films from Disney of the 20th century. Beauty and the Beast is often regarded as one of the best, and I've still not seen it. But I will be seeing it soon, and I've seen the rest of the Renaissance, when I was a kid. This one is the one that I least liked. I don't think I ever really rewatched it all. I watched it once and I didn't really like it, and yes, I can see why now. For me, this is it's not that good. I don't think it's definitely not worthy of. I mean, I struggle to believe how this is the film that brought Disney back. Massively. I don't really see it being that significant and overall that good a film. I think the character of Ariel is very very generic, and just the whole film really is quite generic. This film, I think it is very very average, and really I just didn't overall connect too well with the story, and certainly early on, the first half, I wouldn't even give this a like. I just think, it's a film that really is quite annoying, and one full of quite bland characters. You know, Flounder was good early on, but that character disappeared for most of the rest of the film. And you've also got the character of Scuttle, the kind of seagull, who kind of informs her Ariel of different, you know, human activity basically, but it's not accurate to what actually is happening. But he was an you know, an okay character at times, but again a bit annoying. Flounder was quite good, but really just disappeared. There was a really good scene actually. There was an action scene involving the shark, you know, early on, but really that was the highlight of the first half. Now, you know, I just think yes, Under the Sea is decent, but it's not, you know, a great Disney song for me. The rest of the songs were quite annoying and basic for me, and this is my personal opinion. You know, I just think for me this is the probably the worst film of the Renaissance period, and a lot of people would say it's one of the best. For me, I you know, personally, you know, disagree. I think it's by far the weakest, really, of the Renaissance period. You know, and just it just doesn't really speak to me too well either. You know, the story is quite generic. The characters, you know, Ariel is just she's quite an annoying character at times. And not only that, she's quite boring. The motivations are, you know, very, very one note. She wants to kind of, you know, leave the kind of life she's in, and she wants to kind of pursue this love that kind of just happens. And she just, other than that as well, she's not that much of an interesting character. I think the voice acting was fine. You know, the voice acting in this film is not bad, but really there's nothing to stand out. And the villain I don't think is good. The actual villain overall, Ursula, one of the worst Disney villains for me ever. I just didn't really like the villain at all. I think it was good. The creature design was good, and I liked the kind of end parts where she became massive. But really, you know, the sea king, queen, she was kind of, you know, Ursula just wasn't that good at all. I think she was annoying. Just a character that was very, very one note, but really just not enjoyable, not well written, and the only thing I can praise really is just the kind of thing that happens with her, you know, involving the plot. But even then, it has got its frustrating moments, and but yeah, basically the first half was very, very mediocre for me, and I just wasn't really liking it too much. I think, you know, the side characters mostly weren't that good. I suppose Sebastian was probably, and Flounder were decent at times, but really as well quite underwhelming, and just not really given. Flounder really is just disappears after the first 20 minutes, especially. You know, it has somewhat of a charm early on, but really overall, you know, the film doesn't really have the level of warmth and heart that most Disney films have from the Renaissance period. I think actually this is the one that really is the coldest. You know, the only one I could consider at times quite cold. It's not a cold film overall, but it does have, you know, moments that just aren't that, you know, warm. It's just not very, and it's not that enjoyable. I just think, you know, it's quite boring at times. It has moments that it's quite, you know, that are quite bland and a bit lifeless actually. But the visuals are good. I don't think they're great, even the visuals. You know, in this film, the animation, you know, there's been people say this is got some of the best animation, you know, for Disney, and I don't see that personally. With all respect, I just don't. I think it kind of looks better on the posters, you know, a lot better, and it kind of just, this film just doesn't look that visually stunning at all, really. You know, certainly compared to, you know, a lot of Disney films. Usually I am, for the most part, wowed by the visuals. You know, it's just not that great really overall, but it's good. The score by Alan Menken is good, but the actual songs in the film are underwhelming as well. They're not that memorable. You know, they don't really drive the plot, which is not always a bad thing at all for me, as I've said before. But they're also quite annoying. It really annoyed me when Ariel was basically within the song. She was saying, "What is that word?" You know, and then she said it. You know, that's it. It was just really, really poor choice of how they done the song there. That song, you know, early on, just really quite annoying for me. just quite shocking that they'd done that. You know, just the lyrics weren't that great. Under the Sea is probably the best song in the film. Other than that, I think they fall a bit short. But the score is nice. It is really nice, and yeah, it kind of the second half of the film. Luckily, it picked up. It really picked up towards the end, and you know, I just wasn't really connecting to it. I wasn't compelled really by the characters and the story too much until then. But once she gets onto the land, now she meets the prince, and by no means is this, you know, a well developed or compelling romance for me. But it's nicely presented. That's how I'll sum this up. You know, the romance up really nicely presented, and kind of just nice, you could say. But it's nothing that I really cared for. The prince himself is very very bland. Just stock character. You know, definition of it. And you know, just really not really a character too much, and the motivations as well just didn't really compel me. But yes, it's nicely presented. It's got some, you could say, human moments in the second half, and you know, in terms of the actual plot, it picks up. You know, it's got some twists here and there, kind of creative stuff going on. The visuals are a lot better, and I think as well the final showdown is actually quite impressive. I did actually like this, you know, on the boat and everything. Quite impressive, actually, the final fight. Again, the action there was well done. And, you know, the ending, 5 minutes. Yeah, it was good. I did like it, and I thought it was, that's when the warmth of of the film came through. And it did have some touching moments at the end, you know, but it really, if the characters were better throughout the rest of the film, I would have actually cared a lot more. You know, I don't think this is a bad film at all. You know, it's not. It's not a bad film, and I wouldn't actually say overall, after seeing, you know, through to the end, that it is a mediocre film. But for me, it is very, very average. You know, and by Disney standards, really, and considering the acclaim, you know, and I've not seen this for well over 10 years actually, and you know, all the other ones that I've revisited that I've not seen for a while, which is basically most of the Renaissance, apart from The Lion King and you could say Tarzan as well, which you know I'll get to when I review that. You know, most of these haven't seen for many years now, and I've always been meaning to kind of watch them again, you know, and review them. But yes, basically of all these ones, this is by far the worst, and it's just the one that really. I didn't really like it as a kid, and I barely like it now, and I'd have to give it a 60%. You know, I think it's dead on average. You know, and I know many people love this film, and that's fine. You know, I actually animation is one of my favourite genres in film. You know, it's the genre really that the kind of it's the perfect place for all sort of different elements to come into. You know, fantasy and kind of adventure films. And I just love so many animated films. There's, as I've said before, at least 10 films, animated films, in my top 100 films of all time. You know, and one animated film is actually my top 20 of all time. Yes, you know, and Japanese animated films, and just Disney and Pixar and stuff. A mixture of all different types. You know, I just love animation, and it's kind of shocking for me to not like this as much. You know, as I should have done. It's well on the path, you know, in terms of Disney for me. It's no classic, I don't feel, and this is not me bashing on the film at all. It's just my thoughts, you know. I don't think it's, you know, one of the best Disney films at all. I think it's probably the worst of the Renaissance period, and it is average for me. You know, it's not bad. It does really pick up towards the end, and the second half is a lot better. But really, the first half is kind of weak, / mediocre at best. And just didn't really overall compel me, the whole story too much. You know, in the end I did like it, but it's very very only just to like, as I would say with this kind of film. And yeah, basically the visuals were good. The score was good. The songs not so much. You know, and the voice acting, nothing special really. At times, you know, not that great. The villain, I think, was one of the worst villains in Disney. And Ariel was not a character, especially early on, that really compelled me. You know, I think as well. a lot of the stuff was just annoying, and at the same time as well quite bland. But yes, it has some creativity, certainly in the second half. But again, the romance and everything like that is quite generic at times. I never really felt too compelled by it. It was just nice, and kind of towards the end, kind of warm. But really, this is not a film that for me is a classic at all. I think it just doesn't compare really with the other Renaissance films. Really, even Hunchback of Notre Dame, that's quite underrated actually. That film, and I think that's a lot better than this. And I think that was a very good film. But really, that's one of the worst of the Renaissance. But it's still miles better than this for me. That's my personal thoughts. I love animation, and I liked it in the end. But considering what this film is, it's an animated film. It's Disney. It's the one that kind of brought them back. It's quite underwhelming for me overall, and I found a lot of the stuff to be quite bland. A bit annoying at times, and as well, some of the characters were quite inconsistent. Her father as well, I just don't feel really that was a consistent character. The way he kind of started off, it was very abrupt. I think the change of how he ended up in the end, the way he kind of felt towards her and everything, and it all ended up, it was a bit off tone for me. But yes, I think it's okay. It's average, very very low average, and yeah, I liked it. But as I say, only just, and would highly recommend it. But for me, it just really disappointed me actually overall, considering everything. I didn't let that get into the score. The fact that it's not quite as good as for me it's made out to be. But yes, no, it still is. The afterthoughts of it. It is disappointing. Because I expected to kind of rediscover this and actually really really like it this time round. Where I didn't really as a kid. But I don't really like it that much. But yes, thanks for watching my review, and more will be up soon. Of course, Tarzan will be one of the next ones. A film that to kind of tease it. For me, I absolutely loved as a kid, and I've seen it. I've not seen it. I've seen it more recently, basically, than a lot of the other Renaissance films. The Lion King is the one that I've watched most years, at least since I watched it. I watched it all the time as a kid, but actually in recent years I have watched it mostly every year. So that's a film that I kind of know, what I think of that. But Tarzan is the one as well that you could say maybe I watched it 5 years ago, something like that. And when I did watch it, I loved it. So look forward to that, and I look forward to watching it. So yes, thanks for watching my review of The Little Mermaid.